And Democrats have continued to attack Donald Trump over his connections to Project 2025, the conservative blueprint for a potential second Trump term. And it's a message that seems to be resonating with voters. New numbers from the New York Times and Siena College poll show that 3/4 of likely voters say they've not only heard about it, but for most of those who know about it, they oppose it. 63% of that number opposed to Project 2025. Those numbers might explain Trump's multiple attempts to distance himself from Project 2025 overall.
We have nothing to do with Project 25.
I don't even know what the hell it is.
I don't know anything about it.
Listen to what the former Trump staffer turned Project 2025 director himself has said about it.
We're going to make this happen under President Trump.
It's going to be a D-Day invasion plan.
I'm a forever Trumper.
And now for his first television interview since he stepped down as the director of Project 2025 in July, I am joined by Paul Dans. It's great to have you here. I mean, as you know, given what we've seen from the conventions, it's almost inevitable that this will be brought up on the debate stage tomorrow night. Are you worried that your work could be a liability for Trump when he's on stage up there tomorrow?
No, not at all. And thank you for having me, Catlin. Look, President Trump's the greatest debater, bar none, of our time. And, the breaking news is Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025. Sure, a lot of us have worked in the admin and came together, but this started long before he even announced for president. It was really a coming together of the conservative movement. And I think that's what's been so threatening to the left. Our side's always been prone to infighting. And what we were able to do here was bring together 110 groups and really lay out a common sense plan. Not everyone agrees in what's in that book, but the book's only actually part of the plan. And what we did was really invite people from all over the country to get back into their government.
Well, I think that's why, I was reading through it again in recent days when people say Trump has nothing to do with it. I mean, you worked as the deputy chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management, a pretty significant office. 6 of his former cabinet secretaries helped collaborate or write on it. I mean, you look at it and it's full of names that people would recognize: Chris Miller, Peter Navarro, Johnny McEntee. And so some people say, okay, well, 140 of his staffers worked on it. How can you say that he has nothing to do with it?
Well, he personally didn't have anything to do with it. Certainly a lot of folks, worked on it, came out of the Trump administration, but that's natural for any Republican administration. You're going to have the carryover for the next one. And in this case, it's conservative, but look, those ideas were open to Joe Biden and to implement if he wants to. And they actually are. It's a funny thing.
It is very conservative. Does it bother you when Trump calls it abysmal and ridiculous? I mean, something that you worked on for 2 years?
Well, I mean, I don't know what he's referring to in particular with that. Certainly there were some remarks by people at Heritage that I would fully renounce. Any kind of, talking about the second American Revolution or bloodlessness. We have to lower the temperature in this country. But as far as the ideas within Project 2025, I think they're pretty solid. The reality is that most of what people think is in Project 2025 is in fact not in it. It's mainly misinformation.
There's a few things that Democrats have said that's not true, like on Social Security, but a lot of it, revoking access to mifepristone, which is the abortion medication that the FDA approved 24 years ago. I mean, that is part of it. When it comes to that, you want to get rid of the Inflation Reduction Act, which helped, lower the cost of prescription drugs. Those are all part of it. And when you say Trump has nothing to do with it, if he's reelected, do you think that parts of Project 2025 would ultimately come to fruition in a Trump second term?
Well, I hope so. To be fair, 400 people worked on that book, and not everyone who wrote for the book agrees with everything in the book. It's a coming together of our movement, that only a plotting of points to basically direct the next conservative president. This is a way what the conservatives would like to see. Certainly, I think even under a Harris administration, you see a number of the ideas. They're common sense. These are the things Americans want. And in fact, there's some polling that when people actually look at the issues discussed, restoring the family and really helping us, provide for kids and shoring up our borders, there's great public sentiment in favor of it.
How many times have you been to Mar-a-Lago?
Several, sure.
And you meet with Trump campaign people, or who do you talk to when you're there?
Well, I've met, well, they're not at the Mar-a-Lago per se, but yeah, I've met with Susie, and, from time to time, we have a little bit of interchange, but it's very limited with respect to Project 2025, sure.
Have you met with Trump himself?
I've only met him, shaking hands with him.
And when was that recently?
Well, I spoke at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Tennessee, so I met him in the Snaps line, and I met him a couple of years prior. But no, I really haven't met President Trump.
So when you say Trump has nothing to do with it, you're saying he didn't write it, he didn't collaborate on it. But I looked at some past things you said, and you said that this is ultimately his direction and his team's direction. I think people might doubt that he has nothing to do with it, given comments like that you've met him, that you've been to Mar-a-Lago.
Well, he hasn't been personally briefed by myself, or I don't know what the nature of his campaign briefings on it have been, but certainly we're picking up where he left off in the first term. A lot of us have worked there and we're frustrated. I mean, what Project 2025 really is, it's not a threat to democracy. It's a threat to bureaucracy. It's putting the American, we the people, back into our government. Right now, we have a permanent government in Washington, and this is the essence of a call to people to come serve in Washington. It's Kennedy-esque. It's really, and that's what's so exciting to see, like RFK Jr. and the rest joining the Trump fold, is that this is a coming together for our country.
Are the people joining the Trump campaign, RFK Jr., Corey Lewandowski has returned, are they more open to Project 2025 and its ideas?
I think that the ideas in Project 2025, we talk about making America healthy again. We are definitely going after, HHS, and we can't forget what happened here 3 years ago with COVID and the jabs.
Well, let me explain why I asked that, because you stepped down. It seemed kind of abrupt, given this was a blueprint for a second term. You left in July. And when you did, Susie, who you just mentioned, that's Susie Wiles, and Chris LaCivita, they're running the Trump campaign. They put out a statement after your departure that said, Trump's campaign has been very clear for over a year that Project 2025 had nothing to do with the campaign, did not speak for the campaign, and should not be associated with the campaign or in any way. Reports of Project 2025's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. It will not end well for you. What was your response to that very forceful denunciation of your work?
Well, with apologies to Mark Twain, I'd say, the reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. The reality is that, look, we haven't had interchange with the campaign. A lot of this was done, way before President Trump even announced for office. A lot of the heritage folks worked with the DeSantis campaign. So you might actually say it's more of a DeSantis Project 2025.
Well, Trump's name is in the document 300 times. Well, DeSantis is not.
Yeah, he's the former president, but like when it came time to debut the book at the Heritage 50th anniversary, President Trump wasn't invited by the Heritage Management. They instead gave the seat of honor to Governor DeSantis. So I think, it's very ironic that it's now getting mapped to him. That's fake news. But to be fair, it's natural that a lot of these ideas, because there were great things that he was on the verge of.
Do you think Trump's campaign managers are doing a good job?
I'm excited about the change with Corey coming in. With the RFK Jr. edition, it's really exciting. Dr. Carson is a godsend, and I really think that this is an opportunity for our country to really heal, come together. The president's had an extraordinary year. The gentleman almost died, but for the grace of God, and I think it's we sit here in New York on the eve of September 11th here. I was here for 20 years, and I still remember after that how people came together, and I think we have that moment now.
You worked in the last Trump administration. Would you work in a second Trump term?
Well, I'd obviously be honored to be asked by the president, but it's so important that we get that second term, and I think that that's really what we need to be concentrating on now. I think, the president we had great peace and prosperity 4 years of Trump. You know what Trump's going to offer. It's not what's in the book of Project 2025. It's what he's telling you, what he did. He brought us peace. He brought us rising an economy, rising wages. And we know that for certain with Kamala Harris, she's an unknown, but we know she's the most radical. She makes Biden look like a moderate.
I think she would obviously push back on that. Paul Dance, thank you for joining us for your first two